Thank you, and welcome to the Agency Balance Podcast, where we talk about marketing, tech, real-life self-improvements, and things that make you happy to find your balance. Agency Balance is sponsored by Smartiger, a marketing technology agency that creates solutions that align B2B marketing, sales, and service to drive results throughout the entire customer journey. Get the MarTech experts. Get Smartiger.com. Here is your host of the Agency Balance Podcast, David Snyder.
Welcome to another episode of the Agency Balance. I am so thrilled to bring and introduce Jay. Is the founder and CEO of J. Pryor Consulting, author of Lean Inside, 7 Steps to Personal Power. And I want to make sure that you listen to the end because we have an exclusive coupon for all of our podcast listeners to get a free audiobook at the end. And Jay is also the founder and culture coordinator at Trio Agency Consulting. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
Yeah, and we're stoked to have you. So let's get into it. So, Jay, you're a speaker, you're an author, you're an executive coach from Kansas. Mm-hmm. Please tell our listeners more about you and your story and your background.
You bet. I did all that in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, thanks, Dave. I started my own business as a coach. I got called to coaching powerfully. I was at the time, my undergrad is in communication studies, and I've always been somebody who was into humans, right? And then somehow I ended up in the furniture industry because I needed a job, right? When I first got out of college. So long story short, I got called back to the world of personal development and humans and started my own business in 2005. And then in 2007, I moved back to Kansas to help take care of my mom who had dementia. And she was in that phase of her life where it was like, I knew she wasn't going to be here for another 10 years. And she was starting to not remember people if she wasn't around them a lot. And I felt like, she gave me life. We can go back and give her time. I'm also the youngest of 9 kids. So we kind of circled the wagons around my mom, and, my biggest value is family. And so that's why we moved back to Kansas. But I brought my coaching business back here. And that's how I ended up in the agency space. It's kind of interesting. It was 2008. And it was recession time, and I was dying as a coach, like especially as a baby coach, like just starting out the chute, restarting my business back in Kansas. And I didn't, I was new to the industry, and coaching was a new industry then. Like this is back in, like nobody was hiring coaches then necessarily. So I ended up taking a job, and I said to myself, I'm going to take this job for 1 year. And that's going to help me launch back into my business because I never wanted to give up my business. I'm an entrepreneur by blood. And so I took this job for 1 year, and it gave me a credential, certified me as a business consultant. So I got to learn more about business. And I started consulting and coaching in business. And I found that, man, I love this, right? So I loved business, and I love to get to be with other people as they're building business. And that had me get introduced to Cindy Maud at Callahan Creek. And Cindy Maud was my very first agency CEO I ever met. She was this incredible woman. She was going to be transitioning out in the next 5 years. And her whole thing was about culture. And she built this culture of, where people could be safe to say what they thought. And, she really wanted to keep this and keep building on that. And so she brought me in, and my first agency contract was at Callahan Creek in 2010. And that's when I started building awareness trainings and consciousness trainings inside companies, all underneath personal accountability. So we build a culture where people make requests instead of complain, for example. So we really enroll everybody in giving up complaining, because complaining doesn't do anything, right? It doesn't move us forward, right? Plus, it really does a number on your being if you're going to hold a lot of negativity and complaint. So that's a whole other conversation. But I've been blessed to be in the agency space. But then Cindy Maud introduced me to David Baker. So I want to shout out both, first of all, to my mentor, Cindy Maud, but also to David Baker. High five, David Baker. Bless you. David Baker.
Yeah.
And if folks don't know David Baker, then they haven't been in the agency space very long, because David Baker, is a really power consultant in the agency space for years and years. And when I met David, he was really, thriving in the consulting space, and coaching was becoming a thing. And he said to me, "Do you coach remotely?" And I had been trained, all of my coaching been trained to do over the phone at the time. So I said, yes, that's kind of what I do is my job is, if I have my computer and a phone, I could do it from anywhere. And so, God bless you, David. David, when people started asking for coaching, he would just send them to me. And David Baker's recommendation is pretty heavy. People listen to him. And so I was blessed to have people come to me with David Baker's recommendation in the agency space. And that's how I started coaching agency executives. And I love, once you've been in this industry I've been in the agency space for 12 years, it's every agency has its own, or every industry has its own language. It has its own, agencies have a vibe. I tend to love those like yours, those smaller niche agencies where I can have the whole company in my hands at the same time, like everybody, because then we get to enroll the whole company in building this culture of thriving, right? And it's really been exciting, especially recently with everybody going remote, because now it's a whole other animal, right?
Yeah.
And now I can have but now I have this big screen, and I can have 49 people on my screen, and I can still, just last week I had a training with a company with 14, and we had a really powerful, virtual training. And so being inside of these companies is just, it's been a joy, and it's been, I love my business, getting to do this. I also have a niche of coaching agency women executives. I am a transgender person, and I come out everywhere I go and everywhere I teach because, number one, it would be unauthentic for me not to be. If you want to really know me, that's who I am. And I think it's also important for people, and it has been, I've been doing this since 2010 and always been out. And so, now I have people that I knew back then letting me know that their grandchild's coming out as trans, that their, niece and nephew are coming out as trans. And I'm the first person they call, right? Because then now they know a trans person. But also, having walked through the world, I was 35 years old before I took testosterone and showed up in man skin, or walked around as what I call an undercover white guy for 18 years.
Yeah.
But, I know what it was like to be a woman in business, and then to be a man in business. And so I got to see that transition pretty right in my face. And so coaching, especially the world of agencies, right, where we come from this Mad Men mentality, it's started out as a real man's world. And so I love also coaching agency women CEOs, women executives in agencies, because they do it's a different animal for them. They have a lot different things to deal with than men do. And I have a real insight into that unique world of what it is like to be a woman in business and be a man in business. And that's another lens I bring to agencies, is a world of diversity and equity and inclusion around the LGBTQIA lens. So because they're coming into your workforce, people using they, them pronouns are coming in. Like the Gen Zs it looks like 25% of them now identify as LGBTQIA. 13% of those identify as genderqueer or non-binary, or in that realm. So it's really important that agencies start to educate themselves about this, because they're going to come to work for you. You got to know how to talk to them, right? Plus, what I love about agencies is they're always having to be that ad out there for the voice out there for their clients, and really be that brand, and that has to be inclusive, right? And so it's fun to be the one inside the agency, right? Working with those folks to then get to see what they create. That's one of my favorite things with agencies, is I see all the ads out there that you all build and create. And I mean, it's a fun world. I don't know. I'll shut up and stop talking about it. I could talk about me for a long time. So.
No, you have a lot to talk about. So that's good. And thank you so much for sharing not only your professional background, but who you are. And I think that's so important for our listeners. And if you're, hopefully that's helping people too, and through that process. And in the agency world too. So yeah, absolutely. One of the things that obviously, so you and I met about a year or so ago, and you helped me with coaching. And as I was kind of, still ramping up as the new CEO of my company and taking over, that's one of the things that immediately the first thing I started to work on was people. I flipped our first value and instead of putting the customer first, we put the people first.
Yeah.
And I always said, like, if you take care of your people, the rest will take care of itself.
Right.
So, for us, I was really taking a hard look and going, you know what, we need to work on diversity. We need to work on balance. We need to, we're maybe weighted this one way. Mm-hmm. And, we're really 50-50 right now, and 50-50, maybe 50-48, 2%, whatever it right is. Yeah. And, we are very conscious of that. And, you don't know, because we're doing, like you, with virtual things. So we're doing virtual interviews, and you don't know per se, right. And you can't come right and and ask that. But it's super important.
Generally, I would say that my female CEOs have a harder time with this, and I really feel like, especially in smaller agencies, we have to initiate the slow to hire, quick to fire. Because once somebody is especially in a small agency, if they're disgruntled, right, it stirs up stuff. But a lot of times people want me to coach somebody out of that. And one of my mistakes as a younger coach and as a younger consultant is and especially working at agencies, I thought I could. I thought I could coach them back into the fold, because in agencies like yours that are so small, right, it's important that culture is tight, right? And now that you're remote, you're working even harder at it. And what I was saying is, like, I appreciate that CEOs that I work with really understand when their employees are powerful in their lives, they're powerful at work. And if it's not working for them, like, we got to really it's better for them, right? It really is. Every single time I've ever had a client that fired somebody, that client got their dream job next. Right. Yeah. It was always the next best thing for that employee. But I get, because I work with a lot of really nice, amazing CEOs, that it's heartbreaking sometimes, especially if you've had somebody in the agency for a long time. Right.
Yeah.
You're small. You're small agencies and you're tight. It's hard. And so some of those are the things that I've, over the years, really been a privilege and an honor to work with CEOs around navigating some of those things. And especially women executives.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. For us, we've always had the culture, even before kind of I was at the helm. But as a leadership team, we always encourage, if this position isn't right for you for whatever reason, tell us. Yeah. It's okay to move on. And what I always have said is, I hope wherever you're going to be moving on next makes you happy, because that is the most important thing. If you're coming to your job, and if it's virtual or in person, it's if you hate it, it's bringing your personal life down, it's bringing your performance down, and it doesn't make sense, and it's not fair to you or the employer. So just be honest. I think if you're listening to that and you're struggling with that, just have an honest conversation with your manager, and you'll be surprised. I would open that as I hope that we have an environment that they can talk to their manager and be like, hey, this isn't working out. Is there an opportunity for maybe, hey, to switch departments, or maybe try something else different, or maybe I can just move on. So that's tough. I mean, obviously the climate right now is still different in terms of
very different
how it was. Go for it.
And you've been in this space for a long time. I'm sure you've noticed, but for me, and I've only been in the space for 12 years, right? So my partner, Roy Page, has been in for 30 years. He's seen a lot more than me. But even as long as I've been in, I've seen the boomers CEOs start to exit. Yep. Now we're having Gen X CEOs more. There's a big difference, right? And so part of the culture shift is about who's leading. And so, agencies love assessments. If you talk to an agency executive, they always know what their DISC profile is, and they always, they know all. and I get it a lot. And I use assessments, and I think that a lot of them are really great. And I think that we're starting to use assessments in a way that now, with this generation and the millennials and Gen Zs and on down from the Gen Xers, are starting to actually use assessments and then keep going. So we bring the personal accountability, right? Because I can come into a company and do one training and get people conscious and aware and awake and inspired and ready to take on their lives, but you're going to go unconscious in about 3 days. You're going to just forget everything I said and get back into your old routine because your wiring is what's running you, right? And what I'm asking people to do is step outside of their wiring into something else that's possible. And so they go unconscious in about 3 days. So you have to keep working that muscle. And inside companies where we're doing these assessments, and then we go, and this is how this was my experience. I'm not saying it's the truth. This was my experience, especially when I first started. It was like, yeah, I'm a red. You just have to deal with me. It's like, it's like there's this awareness of what your disc is, but there's no personal responsibility. And so one of the things that we do is really ask you to look at what's it like sitting on the other side of the desk from you, right? What's it like having you as a CEO? What's it like having you as your creative director, right? So really looking at personal responsibility. But what I know, because I get to teach this, is the personal freedom that comes once you are willing to go, oh yeah, it's not that great being me. Maybe I can do something about that, right? And shift up that stuff. Because let me tell you, I'm salty by nature. So I don't wake up all rainbows and sunshine. Let me tell you, when it comes to fight or flight, I'm a fighter, right? I'm in there. So I've trained myself to be more mindful and to come from what I really want to be, and how I want to show up is loving, kind. I want people to be, feel appreciated and loved up when they're with me, not.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Let me stay on that topic for a minute, because that's something that I was really, over the last couple of years, really tried to work on, is be more of a better listener and observe, and then observe myself. So for me, being in sales, one of the great things that I do is I record everything and then I transcribe it and see where I'm screwing up and how I'm acting and presenting myself on camera. But
the best people do that, right? You're one of the best. The best people do that.
Oh,
I'm
well,
not kidding. Tiger Woods has a coach that watches his swing and he records it.
Yes.
Right? So he goes back and watches the recording.
But that's tough. Like, it took me a while to really say, okay, I'm going to put myself out there, number one, and number two, be who I am. And number two, I think I'm going to be overcritical and really start to work on that. But from what you've seen, for like, what are some of the things that you can share that if someone's struggling with, and maybe they don't even know that they're saying certain things or not acting a certain way, or like, what are some of the things that they can do, or some of the things that you can share to help maybe improve in those areas, or be conscious about it?
Yeah, the important lessons, I think, and we touched on one earlier, which is what you focus on always gets bigger. So you have to pay attention of where am I focusing? And if you can really dial in the mindfulness first to see where you're focusing, that's the trick, right? Because most humans we're not mindful of what we're saying, of what we're thinking, of what's going on back here. I assert that a lot of humans are scared a lot and they don't know they're scared, right? They just think they're angry.
Yeah.
And under all that anger is fear, right? And so my goal is to just be this space where people can get that and not have it mean anything. It's just whatever you got wired up that way. So let's have some compassion for that. But you cannot know any of that unless you're going to practice mindfulness. So it's actually funny because I recommend a book called 10 Mindful Minutes, and it's by Goldie Hawn. If you know Goldie Hawn is an actress, right? Most people don't know that she's a mindfulness teacher, and she especially teaches mindfulness to kids. And so this book is a book on the benefits, the neuroscience of mindfulness, but it's written in a way that kids can get it and adults need that level, as far as I'm concerned. Like I prescribe it all the time, and it's really a good book for adult people who have never really practiced mindfulness or paid attention to the words that are coming out of their mouth and the thoughts that they're having and the emotions and how they go together, especially if you have no muscle in that at all. I guarantee you're completely unconscious and you're saying things and affirming things to the world. It's right. We have to really remember what we say about ourselves, especially after the words I am.
Yeah.
Right. God, if you catch yourself saying things like, I have clients, one woman, for example, I will never forget this. She very first couple of words out of her mouth were, and this was about life coaching. She is like, I am terrible in relationships. She was coming to help me work on relationships. Like those are her words, like I am terrible. And then she has all this evidence, right? And that's what we do as humans is we decide something. Usually it's when we're little, when we're struggling with something or when we're coming of age. It doesn't matter, but throughout our lives, we decide things because we've had a struggle, we've had a trauma, we've had a anything. Somebody said something to embarrass us. It doesn't matter. It's just that wiring, right? And that wiring goes, and then we decide something like, I'm no good in relationships. I'm terrible at math. I'm not a people person or whatever it is, right? We decide things and then we gather evidence the rest of our lives to believe it, right? And then it becomes a belief and the truth. So none of that's the truth, right? That's something you decided, right? At some point. So, you cannot know those things that you are believing about yourself until you start to listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth. So the best gift I could give to anybody is to say, if you could start being mindful of what you're saying, especially about yourself, about your agency. When I speak and train, you know this, I say this, the only way people know you is how you talk about yourself. The only way that people know your agency is how you talk about it, right? So I really, when I'm working in a company, we make an agreement, like we watch our mouths. Like, how do you talk about where you work? How do you talk about, the only way you know the only way I know your spouse is how you talk about your spouse, right? How do you want me to be left about your spouse, right? You want me to be left, but you love your spouse. And, like you don't want me to be left with like, oh, I'm worried about that person.
Yeah.
Don't think like that. They just think, oh, I'm just venting and I'm just talking about my spouse or whatever. But you're creating an image with those words.
Yeah.
And that's another reason I love advertising. Right?
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah, one other thing that comes to mind when I heard you talking about that is like, so for me, I really try to block out negative energy and negative people. Like I don't allow them to come on what I call, like, I've read the book Energy Bus and I really believe about that. And so it's like, if there's negative energy, sorry, you're not coming on my bus. Right. So I had a recent encounter about that. So talk maybe about, or some of the ideas or some tips that if someone is coming at you like aggressive and barking and being super negative and that's a constant in your life, what are some of the things as an individual that they can do to help?
Well, if it's a constant in your life, you really need to take a look at your life and figure out is that what's going on that person, that you're continuing to be in relation with that person on a real big level, because there's nobody in my life that's a constant negative where I wouldn't have them in my life. Like they're not on my energy bus at all. For me, all my work is about energy maintenance because I think everything's energy. Back in the day when I wrote my book, and my book is very 2013, but when I wrote it, it was ahead of its time because in the book I said, these words in the book, everything is energy and I don't care if you believe it or not. I just want you to practice it and see the results that you get, because that's the thing. You don't have to have a belief system that everything is energy. I believe that. But you don't have to. But I promise you, if you just start to practice managing your energy, you're going to see results. And that's because it's the law. It's the law of, there are certain laws like the law of gravity, the law of circulation, how energy flows. There's a certain spectrum, the way the rainbow shows up every time, right? Shows up that way every time. So there's a law. And so getting in alignment with that law is what I'm talking about. And people who are negative, like they mess with my vibe. I'm not going to do that. I won't even coach people. Back in the day when I first started coaching and I was a baby coach and I was desperate to get clients, and, I would drag people to their greatness, right? People will argue with you about their maladies and what they're not good at. They'll argue for their smallness. One of my favorite books, which is an old metaphysical book called Illusions by Richard Bach. And Richard Bach is amazing. But it's a fun, really quick read. But he does this little Messiah's handbook. And one of the things it says is argue your limitations and they're yours to keep. Right? And people will argue their limitations all day. Right? So I just don't even drag people to their greatness anymore. If you're not willing to get and to show up powerfully, then I'm not the one I'm not going to convince you of that. Right. So, but I will say if somebody has an upset or somebody's been hijacked, right? So we talk about this a lot where the neuroscience, if you've been hijacked, and your cortisol is high and your right and left prefrontal cortex is wiped out, then you don't have any executive functions. So we want to give those people grace because their executive functions washed out. So they don't have any reasoning. They don't have focus. Now, a lot of times with executives I work with is they've been hijacked so many times over and over again that their cortisol is high all the time. And they sit at a resting point where they're just hijacked all the time. So they're mad all the time or they're easily upset, right? Those people need to go away from work long enough to get their cortisol down, right? And I mean, your cortisol was at a little bit of a high point, right, when we met, but you were able to get it down pretty quick because you're super coachable. So some of these people come in with their cortisol really high, and I tell them, this is chemical. You have to get that cortisol. This is physical. You got to get that cortisol down. And they, but I can't because I have to work and I have to, right? And again, I think the cultures are getting better, but, an agency space is another one where, boy, it's a drive, y'all work. There's not like, this is a 9 to 4 job.
That's right.
Job doesn't turn off. I mean, if there's a deadline, there's a deadline. People are there late, and people, and Nick and I have worked with some burnt out executives, trust. And so, when their cortisol's, if you're dealing with somebody in your agency who is used to be a positive person and now can't find a positive thought to save their life, that's because their cortisol's bent over into that space where they can't get there anymore, right there, and they're in a bad spot. That's called burnout and fried. And so when I work with those people, my first order of agenda always with an executive is to check where their cortisol level is, where their happiness level is, because you are responsible for a staff of people. You cannot hold that space for a staff of people on an empty bucket, right? You just can't. And so my first order of business with any executive, but especially my CEO, is, where's your cortisol level? And if they're negative and freaked out, that's going on. So we want to generate compassion. We want to get them coaching. We want to talk to them about what's going on in their life so that we can get that down. Boundaries with negative people are important. And I think depending on how you were raised and whether you're good at that or not, it takes a muscle to have a boundary without bringing your own fear and negativity into it, to just not bring nothing to it. And I'm still working on that myself. It's a muscle that we all have to flex. When somebody confronts me with something, especially fast, my first reaction is to, they call it fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I can easily go into fawning or people pleasing. As a business owner, I've had to be like, oh, wait, stop. Right? I got to take a minute and not respond because I have to take time to get my own little fear hijacked down so I can see clearly, because my response is to give you whatever you want, right? And a lot of women do that where it's like a client, and then you got your, and then men sometimes balk back, so it's interesting how that goes. But I see a lot of agency executives, clients and agencies, they're wily and they expect a lot.
Yeah.
They change their mind and then they don't understand. This is why being in the agency space for as long as I can, I really understand. I really get that you're dealing with clients who have a really high demand, paying a lot of money for your services. They don't understand what you do. Right?
Yeah.
So then they think, I'm paying that much money for him to write me a line of what?
Yeah.
Or make that design that I just don't even understand. Why do I have to care about a font change? Those kind of things. Like, people do not understand what you do.
Yeah.
And, having to deal with those kind of clients, it's not easy work.
Yeah. So that kind of ties into one of the next things I wanted to talk about. And I think, my first reaction, so what I always do is first off, I'm not the greatest writer. I put that out there all the time. So that's why I enjoy doing podcasts and talking and recording videos. So my reaction always is to send them a video, because the way that I'm talking and looking and I'm smiling.
It's a smart way to do it.
It's changing the way I respond. Right. The other thing that I do is I don't respond right away.
Right. Don't respond right away.
Write it or put it in your drafts.
Now, here's the big muscle. If you can do this, this is amazing. This is more to start start it with a friend that you can do this with first, and then work up to maybe a spouse and then coworkers. I don't know. But if you can make other people right, this is the big goal, right? People human beings want to be right, right? And so people, especially, I try to be uber conscious of what a jerk I can be, right? Because I can cut people off in traffic. I can do stuff. So if I got somebody coming at me with, I go, you're right. I got that, right? And boy, does that take the wind out of people's sails.
Yeah.
The minute you tell somebody you're right, they're going, and you go, yeah, you're right. And they go,
Yeah.
they don't know what to do with that, right? I just say, you're right. I apologize. I apologize if nothing else, if that's your experience of me.
That's amazing. I mean, I've actually, I'm going to try that more because it is, because I think we inevitably want this debate. Like we as humans, we want to play ping pong. We want to go back and forth on things.
We want to be right is what we want to be. There's a lot of juice in being right. And it's a very masculine trait. It's very, power over trait, and all of us are wired up to want it and need it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I practice on giving up being right. We make each other right. Oh, you're right. You're right. But boy, if you ever got a client and they're like, and you go, you're right, I apologize. And then I just don't know where to go with that.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, you're right.
You're right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So one of the difficult things, especially as maybe staying on the virtual side, if you're working in a virtual environment, is because you deal a lot with culture, is how do you get to know and engage with somebody virtually? Some of the things that we're doing at Smart Acre is, well, the first thing is we're still making it important that since we're a virtual company across 7 different states, we are still coming together on a regular basis in person. So if everyone's healthy and able, try to find a common area or an area that maybe you never been before, and travel there and be present and get to know each other. So that's the first thing we do. I would love to hear some of your ideas or some of the things that you saw that are working well for others of how do you get to engage and get to know somebody in a virtual environment?
Well, and first of all, I want to point on to what you said, though, because you get together with your folks, but you also don't just work. You get together with your people and you have fun.
Yes.
And my other agencies that are doing this and doing it well, they're doing the same thing. They're making and airfare and gas prices are really impacting this right now. So it's still being a big investment, and we're working and doing, but my companies that are doing it well are getting together. And again, I work with small agencies, so it's not more than 25 people usually, but they're getting together in person and they're having fun. And I think fun is something that's really important to see how people react to fun and how they want to be and blah, blah, and you get to know people better. The other thing is, and it's an actual great plug for our work, doing this work, this kind of personal development work once a month, which is kind of how I engage with our agencies. We meet once a month on Zoom. Sometimes we do once a month, 1 hour, or we do, quarterly for deep training first, and then we do the once a month. But when you do that kind of training, you're having people share their dreams and their goals and their lives, right? So and we make a confidential space too. So this is where people have a safe space to grow and change and share. And inside of that, they really get to know each other. And so I've got companies who have, only met, like I've got a guy out in California, he's only met his people in Minnesota physically, right, 4 or 5 times. But they know this guy, right? And we've had some really intimate conversations that he's shared, and they really know him. And so that's part of this work that I get to do, is to be that glue and pull out the questions and pull out the what's it like to watch your mouth, and what have you been noticing yourself saying about yourself that you don't want to be affirming. Those are powerful questions to form a kind of intimacy that really does help the culture, especially the ones that are remote. So I recommend that at least, do it without me, fine, but also have some time that's not work, that's just time together to talk about things. And I would avoid politics. I would talk about what do you enjoy about your life. Right. One of the things that we have to really be on guard around, especially when we're watching our mouth, is that human beings bond through trauma sharing and gossip. And we have to, it's just another one of those default things. By humans default to what's not working, right? That's where we put our focus a lot. And again, we have to watch our focus, because what we focus on gets bigger. but we also default to sharing the bad things. So we have to be really conscious in those groups to be have somebody anyway guiding the conversation so it doesn't deteriorate into gossip, complaining. Let me tell you what's wrong with me, ain't it awful party. But I think really having some online virtual time to just talk about what you enjoy about your life and just to be together and have fun, do goofy stuff, play their favorite songs.
It's awesome. Yeah, we absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we do. Like just this past week, we kind of flipped the script. We have a Monday morning meeting where we bring everybody together on a Zoom, and what we decided to do is, you know what, rather than the normal agenda, we put everybody in random breakout rooms, and we just said, pretend like you're just coming into the office and talk about your weekend, talk about whatever you want, go.
Yeah.
And that was so refreshing because when you brought everybody back, you could hear everybody was still wanting to talk.
Exactly.
And it's just different. It's just different. You have to.
Those breakout rooms on Zoom, I got to give a hand to Zoom for that, because same thing, I can put them in breakout rooms with these powerful questions. We come back, we have some really, and same thing, what I learned a long time ago in seminars is, yes, I can set the stage and facilitate, but mostly these people want to talk to each other. I need to shut up and let them talk.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's a great exercise.
Yeah.
Cool. So the other thing I want to talk about this, and then we'll kind of maybe wrap and go into some a little fun little exercise for us. But it's something that comes up quite a bit. It's come up for us. It's come up in my personal life. I've seen it, in news and things like that. But the being able to be in an environment where you feel safe, and talking about mental health and making sure that that's top priority. Maybe just talk a little bit about some of the things that you've seen that you can help. Obviously, from real quick, from my standpoint, if you're feeling like something is bothering you, like obviously the first thing is just talk, and make sure that you have an environment both professionally and, offline at home where you can communicate. But I would love to, just from your expertise, what have you seen kind of being out there and kind of just some thoughts there?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that whole world of the difference between boomers and Gen Zs, there's this statistic that 75% of Gen Zs have left jobs because of mental health, as opposed to boomers. They act like the Gen Xers don't exist. And now millennials don't either. They're just talking about the Gen Zs and the boomers. But it is a stark difference, right? Because in that world of how we viewed mental health, the boomer's not going to go home depressed, right? Nowadays, a millennial a Gen Zer might, right? They might go home because they have anxiety. They might go home. And that's a different world for people. And so I am not a therapist, but nor do I play one on TV, but I do have friends that are. And I often work in tandem sometimes if I have a client coaching, and then that client may also have a therapist if they're working with that. Because it is, we're in a world right now where mental health is top of mind, and it needs to be, right? We have to be. We are having generational healing in our Disney movies now, which is fantastic. We're trying to heal up a lot of hurt and generational hurt and generational genocide. And my God, all the things. And the Gen Z generation has taken that very seriously. And so they're coming into the workforce again. And the other thing is that now that we have this awareness, there's people who are becoming aware of their trauma, and they may not know what that is. So I really think that CEOs today, executive leadership, have to be trauma informed. They have to understand what that looks like. They have to have a willingness to have somebody on their staff who can talk to that, or at least, have somebody who knows somebody who can talk to that, right? Somebody they can get resources for, things like that. And that's, Google did a study. It's called the Aristotle study. You can go look it up. But what they found is the most important thing for teams is psychological safety, is being able to speak my mind and not be afraid that somebody's going to be mad at me about it. Right? And I gotta, again, been in agencies a long time. It's almost like, did agencies create that? Because I've been in agencies back in the day where people got yelled at, right?
Yeah.
Now it's kind of been flipped on its ear, where sometimes I think, I have worked with, younger people who I've seen them get corrected and then turn around and say, I just got my ass chewed, right? So some of that's a little overboard, but we're going to balance out, and it's all good. And what's important is that CEOs stay abreast of and on top of all the latest and how to really understand trauma, understand mental health, understand resources, understand how to outsource resources for their employees, those kind of things. And I agree. It's got to be top of mind along with DEI and all those things. It's, it's a new day. And that's gives me actually an opportunity to plug our event. I have a Conscious Leaders Conference coming up September 14th and 15th. It's going to be in Lawrence, Kansas. And we're really going to just really focus on all of those things, right? We're going to bring my work in on consciousness, mindfulness, watching your mouth, really all the things we've talked about. Then I'm going to bring some of my best specialists in diversity and inclusion work in race, in LGBTQIA. We've got Roy is going to come in and do some strategy with us. So it's going to be 2 full days of really learning and engaging in all the kind of work that I believe CEOs need to be knowing and executives need to be learning now, right? Now is the time. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I for our listeners, log on to agencybalance.com if you're listening on a different platform, and we'll put the direct link to that upcoming event in September, so that we can share that. That sounds amazing, and thanks so much for sharing this. One of the last things I kind of want to close with before we kind of get into Dave's Random 10 is what's the new thing I'm doing here on these, but we talk. So this podcast is Agency Balance, and we talk about balance a lot. And one of the things that I do personally to make sure that I feel balanced in a day, especially during a work week day, is making sure that I'm doing the things that I love every single day. It's something you actually reminded me and taught me a lot when in our coaching is like, hey, if you like working on a car and making it shiny and you want to play with your football cards for a couple hours, do it, right? And I always try to like do that at the start of my day because it creates happiness right off the day.
Same.
So some of the things that you do personally or share with others to help find balance, just some additional tactics there.
I'm a bike rider, so I get up and ride a bike at least 3 times a week if I can, 4 times a week. As often as I can, I get up and ride a bike. Right now it's excruciatingly hot in Kansas, so I got to get up pretty early. But I ride a bike, and that's just a thing I do, and I love. I get 10-12 miles on my bike in the morning, and I've had a really good day. And I'm a singer, so I love to sing, and singing is a very vibrational thing for me. It lifts me up. I love to sing, and I also meditate. I really believe in being still. And, that little monkey mind that's going to run all the time is just going to go. And the more we practice on slowing it down, the more peace we can find. So I've become a daily meditator. I do my best to get 20 minutes a day in the morning and then sometime in the evening. But meditation is also something that I do and the neuroscience research on meditation is off the chart. You can go look at it, but it'll help you find a new level of peace.
Great stuff, Jay.
Yeah,
all right, so we're gonna do some randomness here.
Okay, wait. Can I give my gift first before we do that?
Oh, let's absolutely give the gift right now. So I think we were talking about a free audiobook, right, Jay?
Yes. So I can give a phone number that you can text, and we'll also have the link we'll provide. But you can text the word TRIO free audiobook, all one word, to 415-528-7403, and we'll send you a link, and then you can sign up, and we will send you a copy of my audiobook.
Great. Thank you so much for doing that. Absolutely. Everybody take advantage of that. I've listened to it before. And it's helped me so much, and just value that we've connected, Jay, over these years, and it's helped me out so much. And I apply some of the things that you've shared with me every single day.
Thank you.
So Dave's Random 10, here we go. Feel free to elaborate on any of these, and now you'll probably hang up. We'll hang up the Zoom, and later on today you're gonna be like, What did I just say I like? So, all right, we'll start off easy. Tofu, steak, or seafood?
Steak.
Yeah. I like how you wrinkled your nose right away when I said tofu.
No. Yeah.
Good steak.
I'm from Kansas.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure, I don't know, I'm sure there is some good seafood places, but being maybe landlocked, it's
Oh yeah, but we've got good beef.
All right. Lace up sneakers or slip-ons?
Ooh, that's tough. Lace ups.
Okay. Nice. I like lace up sneakers, but I don't like the laces hanging out. I tuck them in. That's me. That's what I do.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a double knotter, so they don't have to deal with it the rest of the day.
So lace up, but you're slipping them on.
No, I just won't take them off until
take
I'm
'em off.
done. Yeah.
All right, this is a good one, and you might have to think about this one too. Or here we go: t-shirt or collared shirt?
T-shirt.
Good answer.
I only wear a
Yes.
collared shirt usually for business.
Yeah,
I'm mostly a T-shirt guy.
Yeah, love t-shirts.
Me too.
All right, here's super random, and maybe this will come back to Kansas too. Maybe or maybe not. Horse, car, or boat?
Oh, car.
Car. Okay. You don't have a horse out back?
No, I don't. I was raised in a small town, not on a farm or ranching. We're farm country out here, so more cows than horses.
Oh, so if I said cow, horse, or car, maybe you would have picked car. Oh, it'd still be car. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Mountains. Like to hike, like to be in the mountains, or just.
I'm not a fan of the ocean.
Okay.
Beach much. Yeah, again, landlocked.
There you go.
Yeah, there's scary things in there.
All
I'm
right.
a Josh generation kid, so I was
All right.
7 when that came out. Something like that.
So you said you were a singer.
Mm-hmm.
You like to sing.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you sing at karaoke night? What song?
Oh God. Usually it's Neil Diamond because I can do a pretty good Neil. The one that goes, I'm blanking on it. Sweet Caroline.
Bum,
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 bum, right?
bum.
Gets the whole audience going. I like
Yes.
to get people going.
Love that.
Now, I will tell you that when I was a woman before my voice dropped, my song was I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, and I could do a Helen Reddy like nobody's business.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I think it's hilarious.
I like that song a lot too. We were just in Nashville, and obviously the live music scene is incredible there. And to see like a spin on that song in country western is great. That's a good one. I love Neil Diamond.
Yeah.
Good one. All right, this we're getting harder here now.
Okay.
Doors or wheels? Do you know this? Have you heard about this? Doors or wheels? Okay, so what do you think there's more of? Doors or wheels in the world? I stumped you.
Wheels.
Wheels. And why do you think there's more wheels?
Well, I'm thinking like on a house, how many doors do you have versus that same house might have 2 cars at least. So that kind of thought process. 2 cars, 2 skateboards, 2, you know what I mean? Like all the wheels. I'm thinking all the wheels, not just tires, but
That's right. But you know what? Later on today, and for those who are listening, you're gonna walk into your kitchen and go, "There's like 47 cabinet doors. Those are doors." See?
Right. Yeah. Dang. So there's more doors, or do we know?
We don't know.
Oh,
But that's a
now I'm gonna have to
constant
go find
debate.
out.
I mean,
is it?
I mean, go out there,
I'm gonna go look.
try it.
I'm gonna go try to see if I can find out. I used to work in college. I worked for. I'm a KU grad, and we used to have this thing called KU Info, which nowadays with computers is like whatever. But back in the day, it was called KU Info, and you could call and ask us any question, ever. And I worked there for like 3 years, and so I got really good at like being able to look up stuff in books and stuff like that. And believe it or not, 80% of our questions were answered by the almanac. Tons of stuff in there. Yeah. So, but I bet we can find out. More
Yeah, we might have to. People are listening right now that are on their computer or their phone.
They're research people. Go do it.
They're googling this stuff right now.
They're googling it right now. That's right.
Okay, here we go. Number 8. What is your favorite zoo animal?
Tiger.
A tiger. Ooh, I love that. Tigers are awesome. They're beautiful.
They are. I like big cats.
Big cats.
They're pretty. I also think they're less pissed about being in a zoo. So sorry about my language, but I'm not a fan of zoo people. Zoo, it's like, but big cats are laying around and they got,
Yeah.
they're good.
Yeah, I agree. Like it hurts me to know like some of them like are born there, but then I also think I'm like, all right, some of these animals maybe wouldn't survive in the wild if they're hurt or if they can't fly or anything like that. But
I like to see those big cats.
Yeah.
But I don't do zoos much because it's not my favorite.
Yeah. I like flamingos a lot.
Oh, cool.
I'm a fan of the flamingo.
Oh, nice.
They live a long time.
Yeah, we have a lot of we don't have flamingos necessarily, but we have we do. No, we have blue herons. We have a lot of blue herons. On my bike ride, I get to see blue herons and frogs and like stuff like that. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, now that we're getting into the really this is getting serious here for these type of questions.
Got it.
If you could tell future you, whatever it is, future Jay, what was something that you would change?
Oh, what was something I'd change?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How much I worry.
Worrying, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not worry so much.
To go back and tell my 30-year-old, yeah, like the reality is things are always working out for you. Things are always working out for me. I mean, they're always working out. And again, the wiring, boy, sometimes we can just get really freaked out and worry about things that aren't even happening except for right here in our heads. So if I could go back and change something, it would be and tell myself, don't worry, and dial in that mindfulness a lot earlier in your life, because that's where you're in this moment while I'm talking to you, Dave, all is well.
Yeah. That's my number one thing that I've been trying to work on this year. That was my goal for myself this year was part of that is try not to sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
Just kind of let it roll off. I'm really trying to work on it because I get super like bent out of shape over certain little small stupid things.
Right.
And I got to let it roll.
Right. And again, as we raise our awareness around mental health, I think that there's a lot of people who are starting to understand that they have things like anxiety that they didn't know they had because we don't understand the impact of anxiety. Like we don't know what that's about. But now as we're starting to have our children have to deal with it, a lot of us who are, for me anyway, I'm like, oh, I have a kid that's dealing with this. And I'm like, oh, I have awareness of myself I didn't have before. And I think that's a lot of why the consciousness is coming up is because we're parents who are actually making sure our children get the good mental health they need. And, so it's all good. Yeah. It's all good. We're building awareness.
Don't worry, be happy.
Yeah.
So put it back to another karaoke song.
Yeah,
all right.
exactly.
Final question. Number 10. So maybe in the same vein of telling your future self, what would be something you keep that you wouldn't change?
Oh, my love of human beings. I love people. I just love humans. They're goofy and they're mean sometimes, but yeah, I love people. And my willingness to keep being authentic, like that's in that vein of love. I've been out since I was 18 and I'm willing to share myself and be authentic, and the difference I've gotten to make with that has been profound in my life. It's a blessing. So,
well, and thank you so much for doing that, Jay. It's super amazing, and thank you so much for sharing everything today. Yeah, Jay, tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you, either online or social media.
You bet. Well, we're at Trio Agency Consulting. I'm on LinkedIn at J Pryor. I think it's J-Pryor maybe, but you can just find me on J Pryor on LinkedIn, and jpryorconsulting.com. I also have my own podcast called The Gender Reveal Party Podcast, which is at thegenderrevealparty.com, or you can find us on Spotify or anywhere you get your podcasts. So.
Awesome. We'll put all the links in the description as well as on agencybalance.com, YouTube, Thanks, Spotify, Dave. And Apple. Thank you so much, Jay. It's been a pleasure.
A delight. Yeah. Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. Have yourself a beautiful day. And thank you so much, listeners.
You bet.
Subscribe to the podcast at agencybalance.com, Apple, YouTube, or Spotify.